Hey guys, welcome back to the Leverage Advantage Show. And today we're very humbled, grateful, and honored to have Becca Brown with us. Now, Becca is the co-founder of Solemates. Some of you might find that name a little bit um, you might have familiar because it was actually featured on Shark Tank. Now, Soulmates is the preeminent line of women's shoe solutions created specifically for women who love shoes by women who love shoes. And they're known for their flagship product called Soulmates High Healer. And if you watch that episode of Shark Tank, you know what it is. It's this patented heel cap that prevents high heels from sinking into grass and getting stuck in cracks. And I'm not a woman, but I know how troublesome that might be. So Soulmates is available in CVS, DSW, and in a whole ton of retail outlets as well. Becca actually left a career in finance to follow her entrepreneurship dream. So Becca, I'm very grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey. How did you end up becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it was actually 100% born out of personal necessity. I was very fortunate. I grew up in a family where both my parents were always sort of fostering entrepreneurialism. I had a bunch of different businesses as a kid, as a lot of kids do. But I feel like I grew up in a household where we were sort of always talking about business ideas, and it was just a natural environment for me to be in. And I actually worked in finance before starting Solemates. I was working at Goldman Sachs with my co-founder, Monica. And the concept for Solemates was really born out of personal necessity. It was started at my high school prom, which is when I first was wearing high heels and standing on my parents' lawn and sinking into the grass. And it was really frustrating. And I thought, okay, if this is what being a woman is like this is tough. And that memory carried forward with me to weddings and graduations and parties. And after years of this sinking into the grass, ruining my heels, and even working in finance in New York City with the cracked sidewalks and grades, I was always ruining my heels there as well. So after all that frustration, I was fed up and I said, you know what, I'm just going to start researching ways to develop a product. I knew nothing about patenting, inventing, engineering, injection molding, none of that. And I told Monica about this idea for a high heel cap while we were at Columbia Business School. And she had a flash of all the heels that she had ruined in her life. And so we started working on this project. It was really a school project. And fast forward a few years later, we found ourselves deciding to actually quit our jobs at Goldman Sachs and launch Soulmates full time.
Well, leaving a job in finance and being in Goldman Sachs, it's such a big leap. What gave you that because you're going from a life of a lot of certainty to a life of uncertainty, right? And so what gave you that push and that faith to
Yeah, it was really our conviction to bring this product to market because we knew there was such a strong need for it, both our own need and all of our friends and the women we spoke with and sort of focus groups and things like that. We knew that this product had an audience because there was no solution. And it was so simple. But I would say that passion to bring it to market, it almost like there wasn't even a decision to be made. And in fact, when we first decided to leave, we told our family and, some close friends, and I'm sure all of them thought we were 100% crazy. Because to your point, from an outsider's view, you're leaving like a pretty good job, although many could argue that any job is not always certain, especially in finance. But, leaving a good job to start a company based on a product for a high heel. So it seemed pretty crazy, but we were just so focused on making a reality. And I think it was great to have each other because the road of an entrepreneur is oftentimes very lonely and you really have to sort of be a trailblazer. And you don't know a lot of what you need to know to get your product or your business off the ground. So it was great to have each other and even to come from the same background, working at Goldman and having been at Columbia Business School. We both had sort of similar background training, foundation, and to leave together to do it, we sort of were there for each other. It worked great.
I think there are a couple of things that you mentioned there that I think a lot of people need to realize. And the first part that you mentioned, that entrepreneurship is lonely, and it absolutely is. I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was 17. In fact, I've never had a job. I've always drawn my income from profits.
That's
And
great.
I'm actually very lucky to have my business partner Imran because, I remember the one day when we sat in my car and we made this commitment to ourselves because we had come up with this idea to create an online university teaching things that we don't teach in academia,
Hmm.
and it was called Street Smart University. And I remember us deciding to do that business, and for 2.5 weeks, I was paralyzed with fear. I didn't do anything, and he came in and we had this conversation, and he said, "Bro, it's either we're 100% in or we're 100% out, right? Either we're
Right.
gonna do this together. 100% I've got your back, and I know 100% I can count on you, and we're gonna make it work, whatever it takes." And it was that conversation that brought us to where we are today. We 100% have each other's back because like you mentioned, entrepreneurship is such a different path from everybody else. People don't
Yeah.
understand, and some of the decisions that we make that other people might think is crazy, but for us it's the only logical decision to make.
Absolutely.
Right? And and the other thing I love about what you said was about making things real, turning things into a reality. And this is one of the things a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurs is that the job of an entrepreneur is to take what other people can't see, what is our vision and what's in our minds, and make it real so everybody else can see it. And that really is what our job is.
Yeah.
So that those are two perspectives that I got, which I really loved.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge though? Like when you started your entrepreneurship journey to where you are now, what was the
Yeah.
biggest challenge that you've had to face?
Well, a lot of the challenges revolved around learning about aspects of our business that we had no experience in. So we had to work with a mechanical engineer to actually design the product, which I'm holding is a little plastic cap. We worked with a mechanical engineer to design this so that it would dissipate the pressure and prevent the heel from sinking into the grass. And neither one of us, have degrees in engineering. And so we were fortunate to find a great mechanical engineer with whom to work. And then we had to find an injection molder who was going to actually produce this for us. So, it was challenging because we were starting from scratch. And in fact, to first find injection molders, we called on the top 100 injection molders in the United States. And that list was given to us by a friend of Monica's who happened to work in investment banking, like plastics. And we literally split up the list and we called every single company. And these were huge companies like GE and Lear and, all these big companies. And most of them hung up the phone. They didn't want to talk to entrepreneurs. But it was, we didn't let that like deter us at all. So I would say that was one of the early challenges, coupled with the constant anxiety that we had in the back of our minds and sometimes in the front of our minds about making sure we could get this to market before someone else did. And I think that's a common thing for entrepreneurs, especially if you have a product or a service that involves any sort of intellectual property. You probably are almost paranoid that as the time ticks by and the days sort of, pass, there may be someone else that's going to beat you to the market. And so we sort of had to temper that feeling because obviously we needed to do all these critical steps to have a product to bring to the market. But I remember a lot of sleepless nights, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and just start taking notes and start researching stuff because I was convinced that, okay, we can't do this fast enough. So I think those were sort of two earlier challenges. And what I've learned now that I've been doing this for several years is that you always live with that anxiety as an entrepreneur. It may not be that initial sort of get to market anxiety, but there are so many things that you can worry about when you're running a business, and it's about keeping them in check and making sure that you have that balance because things come up that you could have never imagined. Situations arise, and you have to continue to have that conviction and that passion and that ability to see through the weeds or the forest and make sure that you're staying your course.
Awesome. What you mentioned just now really hit the spot. Like for me, the way that I look at business is most businesses have two components, right? So there's the technical aspect and there's the business aspect, right? So when it comes to the design, you need that mechanical engineer finding the injection motor. That's really the technical aspect. And if you were to simplify it a little bit, if you were to look at a restaurant, you've got this person who knows how to cook and who knows how to ensure that service is great, knows that cleaning is done, but the business aspect of getting people through the door, right? The financial management that
Right.
most businesses really have these two aspects, and a lot of times I think what we really need to have a business that generates profits, people who play in their zone of genius. So if you're great at cooking, if you're great at the engineering part, right, and you're not great at the business part, then get somebody else to do it. Or in the other sense, like you guys aren't mechanical engineers, get somebody else to do that. And that's how we get leverage. That's how we grow.
Yeah.
There's so much more to dissect in that, but I'd really love to hear your thoughts on leverage. What does leverage look like to you? What's your idea of leverage in a business?
Yeah, I think leverage is being resourceful always and asking questions. And one thing that we learned while we were at Goldman is you may not know always the answer to a question, but you should know who to go to for that. And we actually say that in our Shark Tank pitch because it's the truth. And in our case, we were not experts in any of the key areas that we needed to develop to have this business, but we had to start early and figure out who can we go to who can help us with this, first step. And maybe they know somebody, and maybe they know somebody, and it becomes this sort of like blossoming tree where you develop a network. And so I think what has always helped me is trying to like literally write down my plan and in steps, like what do I need to do first? Step one, figure out who can engineer this for us. And then, part of that, step 1B or 1A, whatever, is put together a list of engineers. And maybe that involves Googling. We found a great website early on called ThomasNet. And ThomasNet is a registry of engineers and injection molders and 3D printers and packaging companies. And so it was a great way for us to, find companies in sort of a condensed format to then be able to reach out to. But literally like having that discipline to make the list of the steps that need to get done for you to accomplish your vision. Some people get a little overwhelmed when it comes to like writing a full-fledged business plan. And I think to boil it down to the most simplistic terms, it's just make that roadmap, right? Make those steps. So I think leverage comes into those steps because you're going to need to be resourceful and figure out how to get the answers to each one of those steps. And it may be talking to somebody that who invented a product and learn about, patenting. It may be talking to somebody that, has an engineering background or is familiar with manufacturing. So I think you have to be resourceful at all costs as an entrepreneur.
I'm really interested in understanding what your big why is. Why was it so important for you to ensure that this company moved forward?
It's really simple. I knew that if I walked into a store and saw a high heel cap and I had never done anything about it, I would have had so much regret. And I literally remember having that image in my mind before we, made any significant progress with Solemates. I just felt that sort of feeling, that future regret that would be very present had I not taken any steps. And I also think that for me, this problem kept presenting itself to me. So it started at the prom, but then it was weddings and graduations. And the final straw for me was while I was at business school, a friend of mine got married in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it was like a beautiful destination event, a wedding. And every night there were cocktail parties and they were all on these ranches. And so I brought 4 pairs of heels with me and I ruined every single one of them because every night I was sinking into the ground. And that was like the final straw because after years of having this frustration, I was fed up and I said, that's it. I want to figure this out. I want to bring a product to market.
Awesome. We're just going to do a couple of quick fire questions. Tell me what comes straight into your mind, okay?
Yep.
Right. So the first question is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Excellent. And share with me one of your personal habits that you strongly believe contributes to your success.
I exercise. I've always been an athlete. I've played sports my whole life. I try to exercise every day. It doesn't have to be hardcore cardio. I'm a big cyclist, but not every day is important to do that kind of intense activity. I've incorporated more yoga and meditation. And I think it's really important to have that as an outlet for anybody, but certainly for entrepreneurs.
And what book would you recommend as a must read?
I am reading this book now, and I'm going to put it out there that it is a must read. It's Brian Grazer's A Curious Mind. And I love it because it's all about how curiosity is important for anybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or just living your life. Curiosity is the key to really living. And what I love about it is curiosity is free to everybody. It is not something that, you only have if you come from a certain background. It's not something that, you get at a certain point in life. In fact, most kids are curious, and we have a tendency as adults to sort of lose that curiosity, especially if we get into careers and we start to get nervous about things. I think if you're always curious, you're always going to be growing. And if you're running a business, that business is going to be better for your curiosity. So A Curious Mind, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. So let's go back to your Shark Tank experience. Share with me a little bit what have you learned from that experience?
Well, gosh, that could be its own podcast. It was my first experience with reality TV, so I could really talk all about that. One kind of interesting point that people always are amused about is what you see on Shark Tank. For us, it was a segment of like 8 minutes or so, which is the length of the segments. We were on set pitching to the sharks for over an hour and a half. So it's a really long, it doesn't, some people may be a little shorter, some people are longer, but we were on the set for a long time having this intense conversation with all these sharks, and then they edit it down to 8 minutes. So there's a lot you don't see. It was a really awesome experience. I've been a fan of the show for so many years. I think it's such a great platform to educate entrepreneurs, to inspire entrepreneurs. And so it was a really great experience. I think, we were very well prepared for it. We spent months doing like rapid fire question in our office, just to be prepared. We knew everything about our business, but ultimately when the cameras start rolling, anything's fair game. So you really have to learn, or you have to be comfortable thinking on your feet, which is something that as an entrepreneur, you should, get comfortable. Going back to my favorite piece of advice, be comfortable being uncomfortable. The tank, it was uncomfortable, but it was also really exciting. And it was great. And another nice byproduct was we are now part of this really cool community of other Shark Tank alumni. And it's been such a great resource to be able to like talk about, things related to our business, whether it's like finding a packaging company or finding a website developer. And it's just been a really nice byproduct of the experience.
Awesome. And here's the thing, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are looking, so I come from the school of thought where the best source of funding is your customers, right? So as long as you can use that to grow your business. But of course, when you've got a big vision, sales and organic growth is not going to get you there fast enough, and that's why people want investment, right? So what are some of the things that any business is looking for investments? What are some of the things they need to look out for and present to their investors?
Yeah, I would say that if you're a startup or an early phases of a company, the most important thing that the investor is looking for is the founders, the people that are actually running the company and their ability to execute, because ultimately that's the bet that they're making. Of course, you have to have a good business plan, a good product, or a scalable business model and an addressable market. But ultimately, they're investing in your ability to execute your vision. So I think it's really important to always present yourself well. Always be professional. You never know where you're going to meet a potential investor. Monica and I both, we have actually met investors on airplanes. And so you really never know. And I think it's important to always be ready to talk about your business if you're looking for networking or capital. And to also be creative, because sometimes the people you least expect to either be interested or helpful or invest end up being the ones that are the most helpful. We call it the dark horse phenomenon. And conversely, it is very often the people that sort of promise the world never really do anything for you. So I think it's important to be a little bit cautious about people who are coming to you early on saying, we can do your sales and we can do your marketing and Just be careful about, that type of person as well. You sort of have to have a little bit of not cynicism, but just a healthy dose of like, let's see what you can do. Come on, prove it to me before you give away anything in your company.
Oh man, you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, my Imran and I, we were in a partnership with another company, and it didn't take that long. We were with them for about a year or so, but oh my gosh, in that year we lost so much time, lost so
Oh,
much money. An important lesson. It was an important lesson. But and we're young entrepreneurs. Well, I'd like to think we're young. I'm 35 and he's
yeah.
33 or something.
Yeah,
Um,
that's young.
back then I think I was maybe 32. He was 30, something like that. But then there are a
Yeah.
lot of, and I think a lot of young entrepreneurs need to know this, is that maybe it's a phenomenon in Asia. I don't know whether you have this in the States, but there are a lot of older entrepreneurs that that actually look for young entrepreneurs to let's just say prey on. They want that
Mm,
young blood to run the race for them.
yeah.
They want to give that look. I'll give you the strategy. I'll give you the access. I'll give you the experience. But you run.
Yeah.
And we were in a very similar arrangement, and we had to find our way out of that. It wasted so much time. But yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think people need to have that slight dose of cynicism, that little
Yeah.
bit of skepticism. Is this person really who they seem to be? So,
Yeah.
take baby steps. Make sure you date them first. You have like loose partnership arrangements. Test that out. You're always testing in business. It's always about testing, and then
Absolutely.
see how that goes later on. All right. So here's like one of the last few questions. If you had your time again, let's say you went back 10 years, what would you do differently?
Things are different now because of technology. And so if we were to be starting today, I think we could almost do things a little bit faster. Even things like building a website 10 years ago, that required a lot more sort of digital expertise, and you had to hire developers. And now we're on Shopify. With Shopify, everything is pretty easy. Like Monica was literally like making changes to our website all night. And she knows a little bit of coding, but she's not like a pure developer. So it's just a lot easier to do things like that. I also think that social media and other digital marketing platforms have really democratized ways for small brands and companies to reach their customers. I do think, though, on the flip side, it's hard because the consumer is kind of bombarded with a lot, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. Pinterest has always been a big feeder for us, where we get a lot of referrals. Customers are seeing a lot. They're overstimulated digitally every day. So that's why I think you have to be smart with crafting your ads and messages and stuff like that. But I think, we would just be, going back to the previous question, I think we would be, a little more cautious. I don't think we're lucky. We never hired anyone that, totally screwed us or burned us. We never gave away equity to somebody that, didn't amount to anything, thankfully. But I know that happens to companies. So I think starting today, we would just probably be a little more cautious. And to your point, those people that may have come to us in the past, they did end up wasting some time and serve as a little distraction. So we'd probably be faster because we'd cut out a lot of that along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting us pick your brain. We've
Of
taken enough
course.
of your time. We really appreciate you investing your time with us. If people want to find out more about what you do, where can they go?
Sure. So they can go to our website, which is thesolemates.com, or look for us on social media at The Solemates, and it's spelled SOLE, like the sole of your shoe. Or they can reach out to us at info@thesolemates.com.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time. It was a great conversation. I'm very sure our audience will love it. Thank you so much, Becca.
Thank you, Fazil.
Hey there, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, check out the relevant video here, and don't forget to subscribe to us for more marketing tips, techniques, strategies that are working for us, or just more behind the scenes fun. See ya!